Hello, everyone. I am Andrew Levin / author Mickey Wren. It occurs to me that there is very possibly many different questions people might have about the Runic Warriors series and what all these images in the slideshows you might see mean. So I'm attempting to do a special vlog for a while about what those things mean. Let me start with the origins of the stories themselves. The books that have come out over the last few years actually started as 30-page stories 20 years ago. My understanding of what a full story could be and how to didn't seem to, not to mention my attention span, didn't seem to last very long. And by the way I was writing the stories, I figured I would need 5 stories to make one book. Okay? So I set out to try and do that. Every book would have 5 stories in it, and I went to try and get the first one done. So, in actuality, I'd never finished the 5th story. Not to mention, there are many differences in what you're reading today and what it was back then. Okay? Whatever those changes are, the basic impetus of the stories was this. At the time, I was watching the original broadcast of the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. I loved them. I thought it was cool. I thought, the action was really cool in this, that, and the other, but I don't know how to write karate. I only know about battle scenes in accordance with the Army was I in the Army at the time? Well, when I first wrote it, I wasn't. But it's the first thing I could think of actually was more wrestling rather than, because I was watching wrestling at the time. It turned into hand-to-hand combat Army style when I started rewriting this many years later. However, the impetus of the stories was this. At the time, I was researching the magic of the runes, which I had gotten to at first through The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings. After I had finished reading the stories, I was fascinated by the whole thing, and I started researching about the author of those books, J.R.R. Tolkien. Found out he was a linguist that made up half the languages in those stories, which helped explain why it took me 3 years to read 4 books. But I digress. One of the languages and alphabets and such that he didn't make up was the runes, which it turns out were a real alphabet from the Vikings. Thus, Norse mythology, the magic of the runes, and things of that nature are part of these books, because it's part of what I started researching at that point to help understand what the runes really were. Okay? Now, as I was watching the Power Rangers and I was researching all this about the magic of the runes, it occurred to me, the Power Rangers' powers were somewhat magical. The runes have their uses in divination and magic. Who says the Power Rangers couldn't have runic powers? Well, I didn't understand why at the time, but Haim Saban didn't think about it before he sent them off into space. The whole thing got lame and I stopped watching. And so I said to myself, why don't you try and write this? And my first thought was, because I have the attention span of a gnat and can't write past song lyrics, which are like 3 pages and just a long poem. What are you, crazy? But part of me was just determined to try and do this, and I set out to think up characters, think up storylines, and think up all sorts of things to try and create 5 stories that were about 30 pages each to put into one big book. Okay? Well, like I said, I never finished the 5th story before the whole project got buried in my parents' garage. When I dug it up out of my parents' garage back in December of 2014, I began working in earnest on the whole thing, and that's when I created the whole backstory, changed a few characters around, updated the scenarios to something more believable, and ended up with the Runic Warriors series that there is now 4 books out, with a 5th one hopefully coming by June, but I can't tell for sure. So that's the basics of the origins of the stories. If there is any questions you have about the stories, what you'd like to know, anything about the characters, anything about the scenes, anything about the scenarios, how closely is it related to the Power Rangers, whatever you want to know, leave comments. Contact me on my Facebook page under my full real name, Andrew Michael Levin. You could contact me on Instagram at TechSing75, on Tumblr at RunicWriter75, or, make comments here on this video or on any of the videos on my YouTube channel here under my pen name of Mickey Wren. But yes, any questions you may have, I'm going to try and do a weekly blog and just give different information about the books. And hopefully it's information that people have asked me about. So let me know what it is you'd like to know about the Runic Warriors, and I will try and answer those questions. Until then, that's my blog for this week. Thank you, and I hope to find out what y'all would like to know about. Okay, bye.